EAGLES, Eagles.
Good morning, Eagles fans. Welcome in, everybody, to a Wednesday edition of Birds 365, September 11th here. Johnny Mac, Wednesday morning, man. We're now getting closer to that Week 2 game versus the Atlanta Falcons at the Link. How you doing on this Wednesday morning, Johnny Mac?
Already in a mini bye coming out of it.
Yeah.
We get to talk to the coordinators today. So very wonky early season schedule.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel like football yet to me because these goopy schedules, which I blame on the NFL, certainly not the Eagles.
Yeah, no doubt. I do think it's an advantage for the Philadelphia Eagles coming off that Friday game in Sao Paulo, Brazil, where they had to travel 4,000 plus miles for a home game. So I do view it as a positive that they got pushed to Monday night here, at least for the team perspective. I'm not sure how you feel about that, but you think it's a positive? I think it is.
Well, I think I think there's some positive and negative. Positive to get out of the international game
Right.
out of the way week 1, so you don't have to worry about it in season, mid season. That's the positive. And getting out with the win obviously is the biggest positive. But if they came out with a loss, I think it would be a really, really bad setup. But the negative is they played sloppy, like a lot of teams played sloppy, and I'm sure the coaches would like to get back on the practice field as quickly as possible, and they can't do it because you have not only the mini bye from a rest and rehab perspective, very good, but from a coaching perspective, correction perspective, they're not going to be on the practice field till Thursday because the game's on Monday. Sort of the mini bye. And that part is probably not good from the coach's standpoint. Certainly, I would think Big would not like it.
Yeah, no doubt. By the way, it is September 11th today, and I don't want to spend too much time on it. I do want to give a tribute, though. I do want to say just we honor the lives lost on 9/11, the bravery of those who responded. I think it's important to remember the strength and the unity that our country showed at that time. I was too young to remember those moments. I was born in 98, so I was just 3 years old. But when something struck our nation, though, I hear the stories from my parents, and I did just want to put a tribute out to that and just say we honor the lives of those lost. And I think I would love to see our country get back to that united front. I don't know if we ever will, but it is good to remember that, to remember the strength and the unity that brought us together in the face of tragedy. So on 9/11, John, any words on that just before we move on?
Yeah. I wish people remember it. I mean, there was a big debate last night, which I will not get into, but one thing is, they're obviously have the divide in this country. And, one thing was said last night that something was one of the worst attacks on and I'm like, ugh, I mean, September 11th is tomorrow. And, it starts with that Pearl Harbor. Yeah, I mean, I was scheduled to fly out of Minneapolis that morning. And there was some talk that there was another hijacker that was trying to get on a plane there. And there was another one that they were trying to, going to try to obviously do some things too. So yeah, it was just a horrible day, and we probably did come together for a very short time, more than any other point in my lifetime. And it's so sad that where it's crumbled to today, where you have this awful divide with people. And I'm glad to hear somebody as young as you was 3 years old and didn't go through it for the most part, didn't understand it. I mean, yeah, that was, I don't care about your political thoughts, but don't compare nonsensical people with one of the worst tragedies in the history of this country. It's embarrassing.
I'm with you. Good stuff there, Johnny Mac. Good words there. So we do want to honor all the people who lost their lives that day. Johnny Mac, let's move on, get back to the football. We are Birds 365. We have a great show planned for everybody. We have Mike Gill in hour number 1, as we usually do on Wednesday mornings. And then we'll have Brandon Lee Gowton in hour number 2. So a great show planned. We are 1-0, everybody. So take a sigh of relief. We got out of Brazil with the win. John, let's start to look ahead, man, real quick before we get Mike Gill up. What's your early thoughts on this game coming in? You know, Atlanta's coming in. Kirk Cousins did not look like the same Kirk Cousins in that Sunday game that he played. They lost to the Steelers, who dominated that game, I thought. What's your early thoughts coming into this game? What's the keys to the Eagles' victory as we look ahead to next Monday night?
We're going to get some corrections, I think, from both teams. That tends to what happens from week 1 to week 2. But from Atlanta's standpoint, obviously, they'll come in a more desperate team. You never want to start 0-2. And, you know, for the Eagles, it's their real home opener. So there's going to be all the sort of added increase in excitement from that perspective, fans being involved. That's going to be Jason Kelsey's going to be there with Monday Night Football. So that's going to be exciting for fans. Nick Foles is going to be honored. That's going to be exciting for fans. So there's a little bit more amped up. It becomes a little bit more difficult to deal with the home opener of a particular team anywhere in the country, and certainly here in Philadelphia. So bad spot for the Atlanta Falcons. Kirk Cousins didn't look healthy, and it's going to be difficult if your quarterback isn't healthy and he's not competent, he's not playing well,
right,
until you see that turn around. Now, Bijan Robinson, we talked about a lot coming into that draft. He looked tremendous. So they have some players: Kyle Pitts, Drake London,
they do.
Grady Jarrett, great player. Matthew Judon is a player they acquired. Justin Simmons. Boy, I hope he doesn't make a play, because Eagles fans will never stop talking about that if that happens. So they do have some talent. This isn't a bad football team. But until the quarterback proves he's confident and can get back to where he was at least before, it's tough. It's tough to look at the Falcons as a tremendous threat. And I do think the Eagles pass rush, they got to get going in this particular game, because not only are you coming off a poor performance on a shaky field, and that's why I've given him sort of a mulligan, but you know, you have a quarterback that's stationary, he's not going to move around. You don't have to worry about the dual threat aspect of it. He's not confident to begin with the Achilles, it seems. You know, you can be pretty confident that he's going to be where you think he's going to be from the pass rush perspective. And they got to show up this week. They really do.
Yeah, because Pittsburgh did, man. Pittsburgh had pressure on him last week, and it really got to Kirk. And I think that's going to be one of the keys to the game for this team, is that defensive line is going to have to show up. You talked about it, how, you know, you were expecting – you kind of gave him a mulligan in week 1, Johnny Mac. I didn't want to go as far as you. I'm like, it's the NFL, man. I don't want to give mulligans. But week 1, rust, the field, I get it. I get why they weren't as good. But I think they really got to be good this week. I think, you know, the sights are set on not only Bryce Huff, but Jalen Carter. Josh Sweat's going to have to do something. I think all those guys on the defensive front are really going to have a big game to make the Eagles' life easy here.
And you know, you mentioned Pittsburgh, and they have TJ Watt.
Yeah,
so
and he just wrecked the game.
That's a little bit different. And he did wreck the game, and he's one of the few players in the NFL capable of doing that week in and week out. So the Eagles don't have that kind of player. Hopefully Jalen Carter can turn into that. And we talk about his upside and his potential, and it's all true. But yeah, he's not at that level yet. So he's got to start proving it. As you mentioned, he's coming off a poor game, certainly for him. Other than Brandon Graham, you could put everybody in that category, I would say. And from the defensive front, I thought Josh was okay. I thought Milton Williams was okay. And then everybody else, Jordan Davis, a lot of problems getting off blocks, which was a disappointment. Poor tackling when he had the opportunity, which is a disappointment. Nolan Smith, I wanted to see a little bit more when it came to the pass rushing sort of plan. But again, maybe it had to do with the turf. Can't just be a speed guy. They're going to figure that out quickly. Big time NFL tackles. So he's got to develop some kind of counter. We know Bryce Huff is everybody's hyper focused on him. So almost the entire group really. And Moro Jomo was okay in limited snaps, I would say, but almost the entire group was less than what you expect them to be on a weekly basis.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I do have one question here, Johnny Mac, from our man Callie. He says, maybe I'm slow, but what WTF is a mulligan? Callie, that's a do-over, my man. That's a golf term. I think it's mostly
it's a golf
to use in golf. When you get up there and I call it the breakfast ball. When you get on that first tee and you hack it 20 yards or 50 yards off to the left, and you're like, hey, nobody saw that. I'm going to do it one more time. So that's what it means by a mulligan. John, I did get a super chat yesterday at the end of the show that I missed on giving it to you, and it was a great question. It does relate to this. Abe says, Zander, could you ask Johnny Mac if they're going to keep Mitchell at CB2? The super chat was about that, and it was about Zach Bond. So thank you to, I think it was Rashid Mixon who gave that super chat yesterday. Just real quick on Quinyon Mitchell. They lined him up on the outside as you wanted them to do, Johnny Mac. He looked good. You think they're going to move him out of there, or is Quinyon Mitchell there to stay on the outside?
Yeah, it's going to be one of the interesting things. Isaiah Rodgers was close to playing in the opener, so presumably he's going to be back for week 2. Now, the way he phrased it, Quinyon was always going to be cornerback too, so I presume he means are they going to keep him on outside? So, the thought if Rodgers was there that Quinyon would start outside opposite Slay when only 2 cornerbacks were on the field, and then move inside when you needed 3 corners and a slot corner, move inside to play the slot with Rodgers coming in outside. But he was always going to be the 3 down corner with Slay on the field. So that part, yeah, he's going to be that. The only question is, are they going to keep him stationary on the outside? And yeah, all he did is prove that you should do that.
Right.
So, from Vic's standpoint, the decision is, all right, Avonte Maddox didn't play well. Did he not play to the point where you want to make a change there? And also Cooper DeJean is in it, he got not a ton of work, but he got a few snaps, usually in dime packages when he was out there against Green Bay. I think it was 5 or 6 total, and didn't show up, didn't do anything poorly. So how quickly is he ramping up to speed? I think ultimately it's going to be Mitchell and Slay on the outside, Cooper DeJean on the inside. How quickly they get to that, until they get to that, they might and go back to the original plan. I would be the first one to say that's a mistake. I think you saw Quinyon Mitchell's upside at cornerback, outside cornerback, and they shouldn't mess around with that. And Isaiah Rodgers, good player, nice guy. Bad luck. I mean,
yeah, and I think Avonte Maddox struggling so much in week 1 complicates this decision. Because if he's not going to be up to par, it might be best for your overall team to move Quinyon to the slot, especially when you're playing a guy like Drake London or whoever it might be in the slot for the Falcons, and then you can get Isaiah Rodgers. I don't know why Isaiah can't play slot, by the way. It doesn't seem like he wants to play slot.
Yeah, they might want to start. I don't think it's him. I think, they see the bit. One of the things in slot, it's big about run fits. And even if you look at Maddox and his poor play, he did a good job as a tackler. One of the few players who got decent grades as a tackler. And that's one of the reasons why he was and, could be. And you mentioned that term difficult decision. For me, it's not difficult. I'm keeping Quinyon outside. Does Bick feel the same way? I think so, and I'll get to talk to him later today. And one of the reasons Avonte can play in the slot is because he's good with those run fits. In fact, I think he was graded from PFF as the best tackler on defense. So as long as he's doing that, I'm okay persevering, and I think he'll get better. I don't think he's going to play that poorly week in and week out. He's a good player when he's healthy, and he's healthy. So, yeah, to me, it's easy. Just keep Avonte there until Cooper's ready, and keep Quinion on the outside. Do they think it's as easy as that? I don't know. We're going to see week 2.
Maybe they overcomplicate it, but Johnny Mac makes a lot of sense there. Quinion, I think it's a good thing though that we saw what we saw from Quinion, and we all feel confident about the rookie first rounder being on the outside. He showed a lot in week 1. He showed a lot all through training camp, really. So looks like we got one with him, Johnny Mac, and Quinion Mitchell. So we'll see how he continues to develop. John, by the way, the super chat from yesterday was from Rashid Mixon. I'm reading it now. He says just the start of it, because I did want to answer him. I promised him I would get to it with you. He says, if Bond turns out to be a baller, it will be a cardinal sin if we let him go, Johnny. Would love to see Rodgers play, but can't move Mitchell. Fly, Eagles, fly. So we hit on the Mitchell-Rodgers part of it, but Zach Bond, man,
well, if he plays like that, they're not losing him.
Yeah,
I mean,
they're going to sign him, right?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't worry about that. The Eagles sign who they want to sign. They're one of those teams. And if he plays like that, yeah, there's going to be no concern. But from both perspectives, because, Zach has been in this league for 4 years and never got an opportunity, a big opportunity to show what he can do. And that was the first time he's on the field for the entire game. And yeah, I mean, he set the bar pretty high. He can't live up to that bar. Please don't expect him to get 15 tackles and 2 sacks every week. Obviously, from a standpoint of sacks, that would be 34. The record is whatever, 22 and a half, 23. You can't keep up that pace, but he got his opportunity, and he really seized it and took advantage of it. I would not worry I would not lose a minute of sleep over worrying about his contract.
Well, Eduardo brings up a good point. They better not pull a TJ Edwards on him. We'll see, though. It's one game on Zach Bond. Don't expect 15 tackles and 2 sacks, but I do think, he showed a lot of signs there, Johnny Mac. He could make this linebacking core better than we expected them to be, which would be a big win for the Eagles defense.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, I gave him the game ball. I thought he was the best player on the field. Yeah, I mean, but, don't expect that every week. It's not fair. You can't expect that out of Fred Warner every week. So, it's tempered a little bit.
No, you're right. But it was positive signs from Zach Bond in week 1. Let's see what everybody is able to do in week 2. Just 5 days out or 5? Yeah, 5 days out here from the game 2. It's a Monday night, like John said at the open of the show. A little bit of a mini bye week here with a Friday night game and then a Monday night game. Eagles obviously had to travel home from Sao Paulo, Brazil. So we'll be previewing that game all week long. We got Mike Gill in the green room. So Mike Gill's coming up next here on Birds 365. I want to welcome and thank everybody for being here this morning. Already a good crowd here in the opening segment. Make sure you guys hit that like button if you're enjoying the show. Birds 365. I'll be right back in 3 minutes with Mike Gill on the other side.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
He's blocked well and tries to cut through the middle. Oh!
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on Sports Grid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on Sports Grid.
Score and save in southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Heading down the shore, have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wildwood day.
Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to a Wednesday edition of Birds 365, joined now by Mike Gill from 97.3 ESPN down the shore. Mike, welcome to the show, man. How you doing on this Wednesday?
Good morning, guys. I'm doing good, ready to go. We got an extra day off this week, so it's like this thing starts, and then they kind of put you into a little bit of a halt again, so a little frustrating, but hey, it is what it is, right?
Yeah, this schedule at the beginning of the season, it's good to get the international game out of the way if you're going to want to play one, but if you have to play one. So from that standpoint, I think it's good for the Eagles, but boy, I get the feeling the coaches would like to be back on the field trying to correct some things before they get back on the practice field tomorrow. Right. That's a long time. But it is what it is. There was a lot of sloppy football. Nick talked about it. I think anybody who watched Sunday saw it in live and living color. How much do you? I used the term mulligan. We had to explain it to some people. You get it, Mike. I gave him sort of a mulligan, especially the pass rush because of the field surface. I think that's fair. Where are you from that standpoint? No excuses from winning the game or losing the game because you're both on the same field. It affected the Packers as well. But from an individual standpoint, it's tough to evaluate that game, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, after the game, one of the things that I kind of looked at and said, man, this offense scored 34 points on a night where it was really hard to be explosive. And then on the flip side, I thought, and people, I think, were not impressed with the defense. Likely, it seemed like most of the feedback I got was same old defense, all that kind of stuff. And I said, I thought they won the game with their defense in the first quarter. Those 2 stops they got were huge stops. But it's hard to evaluate because I thought Jordan Love did not play well. But some of the time, I mean, every time he'd go back to pass, Noah Eagle, who was doing the play-by-play, it felt like he was like, Love goes back and he slips. And he throws it over the middle, and the receiver slips. He was throwing behind guys, but were they really behind, or was the guy slipping in and out of his routes? It was a hard game. I really thought that the field was so disgraceful that the NFL should be ashamed of itself with these things. They have got to do a better job with these surfaces. You cannot have games like this where that is the story. You have 2 teams that played in that game in prime time to kick off your season that have Super Bowl aspirations. And for both teams, you're talking about, well, I can't even evaluate them because the surface you put them on was so bad. For that to be the story of the game with those 2 level of teams is shameful for the NFL.
I'm with you, Mike. No doubt. I'm completely with you on that. Me and John talked about that already, where it's, especially the second game of the year, right? You wait all off season for the NFL to roll around.
How many
Friday
times?
Night.
Seriously, I do a podcast about like sports media and announcers. Okay, it's one of the focuses of a podcast that I host. How many times did Noah Eagle say he slipped? His feet came out from under him. I mean, you lost count. You know, it's like a guy being a fact checker for the debate. You just stop counting for lack of facts at some point, because every other play they were slipping and sliding. And I think it was, you know, if you look at the Eagles offense and say, well, Jalen Hurts was kind of, I used the word uneven for him. Was he great? No. Was he awful? He made a couple bad decisions, but overall, he was pretty good in the game. But how much of that was, I can't trust my footing on this field for both of those quarterbacks.
Yeah.
You think Jordan Love is as bad as he looked the other night? I don't think so. But you didn't know where your receiver was going to be. You had Saquon Barkley with 109 yards. He had a couple of explosive runs. But how much more could he have gotten? How much more meat was on the bone if he trusted himself to break in and out of some of the moves?
The first play was a 5-yard loss because he slipped.
Yeah. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. And you know, it's funny you say that, because I got a compliment. I said, boy, woo, the field looks pretty bad early in the game. And I got one, you know, the Eagles were slipping and sliding all over the place. Saquon losing the 5 yards. And I got the snarky comment, as people are wont to do. Green Bay's not having a problem. And then it started with Jordan Love every time, to the point the poor guy had to delete it. It was so obvious. But yeah, that is certainly a big part of it. And Jordan Love, yeah, I mean, you make a good point. You know, I mentioned his lack of accuracy. There were a number of passes that were behind receivers, you know, and you're right. Maybe they were supposed to get out of their breaks. It maybe wasn't as inaccurate as it looked. It's tough to really gauge. It's tough to really evaluate, but typically he's not that inaccurate.
Right. And to go back to Zander's question, you know, about, you know, you look at the defense or I think it was your question, John, about the pass rush. You know, you get Bryce Huff, nothing burger. He didn't show up. In fact, it wasn't until midway through the fourth quarter that his name finally got mentioned. And that's from Blackledge, who was doing the game, saying, we haven't called his name all night. And that's the only time his name was called the entire night. I saw Nolan Smith rush the outside, and then basically like the Super Bowl with Hassan Reddick, he'd get to a certain point, the lineman would just push him, and then his feet would go sliding out from under him. It happened all night long. So I don't know what to make of the pass rush. It was non-existent for the most part. Can I say they didn't do a great job? No, if you're just looking at the night, no, they didn't do a good job. But I can't tell whether they did do a good job because of the field conditions, or are they that bad? I don't know what to make of that. But I got to tell you this. If Bryce Huff was as bad as he was the other night and it wasn't the field, then the Eagles.
Yeah, then it's a problem. Then it's a big problem. Yeah, but I can't go there yet. And I think Green Bay
can't go there either. I would say I was not excited about the signing. I thought it was a tough spot for him to try to replace Hassan Reddick. And the first sample size was not good.
As Zander brought up the other day, as the Jets were getting dismantled by the San Francisco 49ers, all the Jets fans were complaining that their edge rushers weren't like Bryce Huff. It's, you know,
they're back.
Yeah. So it's funny. And I saw Chicago people raving about TJ. It's hilarious to me, you know, because he, you know, the undrafted part of it from that perspective. So while we talk about that evaluation, but here's what complicates it even further, Mike. Zach Vaughn played the way Zach Vaughn did.
Yeah.
Reed Blankenship played the way Reed Blankenship did. Why did they figure it out?
Good question. If Zach Vaughn, I've been asking people on my show this, I might even have asked you, did the Saints completely miss on this guy? Do you have a defensive player of the year candidate on your team? I mean, what did I
after 1 week? The vote is this week.
Yeah,
he might be defensive player of the week. So.
You would have to imagine he has to be the defensive player of the week. I don't know what to make of that. And the way they used him, they had him in coverage. They had him at one point, correct me if I'm wrong, it looked like they had him on a corner blitz. I mean, he came from like the sideline to make the play on one. They had Graham drop it into coverage. I know people love when the defensive linemen and edge rushers drop into coverage, but Graham drops into coverage, and they had Bond coming from who knows where. He was out of his mind, and he did a good job taking on blockers, getting off of them and making tackles. I mean, stuff that you weren't sure that he could really do from that inside linebacker position. You know, hey, he's been an edge rusher. That's the way the Saints kind of used him. And the Eagles said, no, we're going to try him here. He took on some blockers. Now, conversely, I thought Dean was very uneven. I thought he did a good job at times. He had some splash plays, but he had a rough night at the office against the run.
Yeah, I agree.
That's going to be, you know, we talked about it yesterday. Some of the storylines leading into Monday night, that Devin White story, is he going to be ready to play? And if he is, what happens there with him and Dean? Did they see enough from Dean to say, he's our guy now? Sorry, White, you're replaced. I know some people think that already has occurred.
Yeah, that's already occurred. They're not pulling that trigger.
Did they look at Dean on Friday night and say, that's what we were hoping for? Or do they say,
Well,
I mean,
I think
it was so uneven.
I think that'll be like, they're not reversing that decision in 1 week because of that field. I think if it continues, then you got a problem if you're Nakobe Dean. But I do think he won the starting job. The more uncertainty is Rodgers coming back. Presumably he's going to be back. So did they keep Mitchell outside? We were talking about it a little bit.
And that was number two. Was that how's the secondary going to evolve with the way Mitchell, I thought, played excellent. Mitchell made you feel pretty good. And you talk about slipping and sliding. He didn't seem to have those issues either, although some guys in the secondary did. But Maddox, I thought, had a rough night. Do you want to stick with Maddox there and keep Mitchell on the outside, or go back to your original plan and move Mitchell back inside and have Rodgers on the outside? So that's going to be something.
That one's more interesting. Zach lined up 13 times as an edge rusher, 47 times as an all-ball linebacker, 6 times in the slot, 1 time at corner, which is probably the play you're talking about. Per a game high 67, played every single defensive snap. Yeah, he was Andrew Van Ginkel. That's what big
now,
kid.
At the end of the day, if your best defensive player is Zach Bond for the whole season, does that concern you?
Not if he's Andrew Van Ginkel, it doesn't concern me. But I don't know. It's ironic, too. They're good friends, former college teammates.
Van Ginkel had a good game on Sunday.
He had a great play. Yeah.
Did you see his pick six?
Yeah.
Unbelievable play.
I watched a lot of that game. I'm not a red zone guy, so I actually watch.
I'm not
games.
either, Mike.
Yeah.
I hate the red zone. It makes me feel dumber after I watch football. I watched it.
I admit, because I don't often get to watch football, so I wanted to watch as many teams. Usually I'm at a game or you know, I'm hyper focused on the Eagles.
Well, yeah, you're watching a full game. I can't stand when it just goes from game to game to game.
No, I wouldn't do that. I'm saying this weekend, though, I did. I watched a lot of red zone because I wanted to see the whole league. And it was a rare opportunity to do that for me. And yeah, it was a lot of ugly football. I can say that.
It was.
But Van Ginkel was tremendous under Fangio in Miami last year. So if you can replicate that, I don't know if you can replicate that over 17 games. And he got hurt at one of the big issues for Miami is he got hurt. Jalen Phillips got hurt late in the season. And Vic's defense took a big hit. If you can replicate his presence on Miami here with Zach Bond, you really got something. It's one game. I don't want to overstate it, but it was a phenomenal one game. I will say that.
Yeah, Bond far exceeded any expectations you could have had for him. Anybody, even Bond's parents might have said, "Hey, I don't know if my son's got this night in him." He was excellent, highly impressed there. Can he keep up for the full season? I thought Dean looked small at times against the run. But ultimately, he made some plays here and there. He had a play in the open field. He made some open field tackles. So I'm not saying, hey, pull Dean. It's time to pull the plug here. I was a guy last year. I loved Dean coming in. I thought he was going to be a huge difference maker for them last year. He obviously got hurt, and that's been one of his problems there. So the linebacking for one night kind of did their job. Again, down on the goal line. I thought that was a huge – those two stands inside the red zone in the first quarter. Milton Williams, I thought, had a really good game. I thought Jordan Davis had maybe one of his best games as an Eagle. The stats wouldn't say anything.
I can agree, yeah.
For his role, stats don't mean anything, but he finally had some sort of an impact taking blockers on. Carter was really good. It wasn't his best game. It wasn't a flash night for him. But overall, I saw a lot of people, same old defense. I kept getting that message to me. Same old defense. Defense stinks. No pass rush. I thought for the most part, the defense won them that game early on. And what it shows me is you go back to the Super Bowl, the year that they won that Super Bowl, and even the year they didn't win the Super Bowl, but were there. The difference was the defense didn't play well in the Super Bowl game on either night. But they showed you in the one Super Bowl that if we can make a play, do we have a guy on this team that can make a play when we need it? And Brandon Graham gets the strip sack. The next year, they never got that play. The play just never came from anybody. This team, do you have that guy on the team that can make a play? Do you have guys on this team? And I think you have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson can make a play in the secondary. I love what I saw from Mitchell. I'm not ready to anoint a rookie as a guy who can make a play in a Super Bowl, but you feel better about that spot than you did a year ago. I don't know that I can trust Zach Bond to be an impact player week in and week out. But who on that defensive front can make the play for me? And in those red zone situations that really, looking back, won them that game, they had multiple guys up front win battles and help them win that game on Friday night.
And I think partially that's the big improvement you get with Vic Fangio. You're going to be much better prepared for a situational football like they were early in the game in the red zone when the field is condensed and there's not as much space and it becomes more difficult for the offense. He finds ways to dial up the right things in the right spots. And I think that'll be a huge advantage for the Eagles this year versus last year. To your Super Bowl point, they got guys who can make plays. You got to make plays.
Yeah.
The second Super Bowl team was better in the Super Bowl than the first one. But Brandon made one play. I mean, Tom Brady threw for 505 yards.
Well, the point I'm making is even if you have a good defense in 2017, they had a good defense. On that night, it was not a good. They did not. So like was playing Friday night. You might say same old defense. This is a pretty good defense. Last year was a bad defense. They were bad defensively. This team, we don't know yet, but I think just looking situationally, they stood up and made some stops when they had to, which is something last year's team had a tough time doing down the stretch. And if you're trying to say, hey, are you past what ailed you over the last 7 weeks? You at least had a pulse defensively on Friday, as opposed to the corpse you threw out there the final 7 weeks of the season.
Yeah. I think that first quarter, Mike, as you pointed out, was big too. I mean, if you go down 14-0 there, this is a different football game.
That game could have been over in the first quarter. You get that terrible turnover, and then you get the right after that, they get the ball right back, and you're in the red zone, and you look up at the scoreboard, and you're like, it's 6-0. If it's 14-0 in the first quarter after what happened last year, how much is that seeping back into your mind of what the heck is going on here again? You could have had chaos ensuing on that sideline, but instead the defense settles you in and allows them to kind of get back. And then you get that offense churning. And once, I thought Hurts got into a pretty good rhythm at one point, and they got moving and you felt like, all right, here we go. And then, of course, it was a back and forth because the defense kind of sunk down after being on the field so much and making their 2 stops. But in the end, they got, they made just enough plays defensively. But those 2 stops early end up being the difference for me.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mike. Let's go offense, Mike. Saquon Barkley comes in. I'll start there. 3 touchdowns in his debut. What did you see from Saquon, and what did he tell you about the potential of what this offense can be with the amount of playmakers they have on the field?
Well, I was a fan of the signing. I like Barkley coming in, and for no more reason. Look, Barkley's a great talent. There's no denying that. But in my mind, Howie Roseman isn't a dummy. He's very has very smart and ways that he does things in my mind. And there's this thought of like he goes down and says, you're going to do this and you're going to do that. You're going to play this guy. That's not what I'm insinuating. But if you spend $12.5 million on that guy, I think it was pretty well stated in that check that this guy's going to be a big part of this team. And what I think the difference was, guys, you had a 1,000-yard back last year. You had a 1,200-yard back the year before.
Mm-hmm.
But your running game really had no identity. Who were you as a running team? I mean, you really didn't know what this team's identity was as a running team. You now have not only a running game that you have an identity with, you have an offense that you could say if you want, our offense is Saquon Barkley. You're going to have to figure out a way to stop him. And if that's going to be your game plan, now this is when we're going to use the other weapons that we have. So I think the identity of the team can now be, we have Barkley, and we're going to use him until you decide to stop him. And if you don't, if you want to go stop him, now we're going to go to Brown and Smith. Good luck with that. It's given their offense some sort of identity in the backfield that I just don't think other teams said, you know what, DeAndre Swift, they don't really care about him. Miles Sanders, they don't really care about him. The defensive coordinator now has to say, we have to figure out where he is on the field. And I think it's given their offense a huge layer of identity that they didn't have.
Boy, I got to defend Miles Sanders a little bit.
Sanders was great.
I mean, that season, and I know what he's become in Carolina. And I think the revisionist history starts from that standpoint. I mean, that season until late when he got banged up, he was unbelievable.
1,200 yards,
worried
about touchdowns.
Now, part of that was the offensive line. I mean, let's be honest. But I mean, when you talk about the effectiveness of the running game, and that was the Super Bowl team. That was, if they get to that level again, you're really cooking with gas when it comes to the running game. I forget what Miles averaged that year. He had a bunch of touchdowns. He had
11 touchdowns, 1,200 yards rushing. He had a great year.
Yeah, and it was near 5 yards per carry.
But do you think teams?
I think people don't understand.
Think teams game plan for the Eagles saying, "Where's Miles Sanders?"
No, I don't. But there's where you and I differ. Nobody's game planning, but that's the whole point. That's the brilliance of Howie. Everybody's coming in game planning for AJ and Devontae.
Okay.
And Jalen.
Well, guess what? If that's your game plan, you're going to be screwed. If you're coming in and only
that's the beauty of it.
Well,
that's
exactly.
The beauty of it.
But that's going back to Xander's question of why now I have a guy that I don't think the Eagles wanted to make a game plan surrounded by or that's precedent on their running game. You write a check for $1,250, Jeffrey Lurie, and the whole he wants to throw, blah blah blah. When Jeffrey Lurie approves a check for $1,250, I don't think he has as big of a problem turning around and handing it off to that guy.
Well, you signed bigger checks to the quarterback and the two receivers.
Right, but before you get Swift in here, a guy that you'd get for $1 million.
I'm just saying, and by the way, Nick said it again yesterday when he was talking about he was asked about keeping everybody happy, and they were able to keep everybody involved. All the playmakers involved. And he flat out said, no, that's not possible every week. And he said again, look, you game plan, it starts with AJ Devontae. He said it 1 million times.
Hey,
I mean, I don't know why people struggle with it.
guy. He's a gamemanship guy.
He's telling the truth. He's telling the absolute truth.
He may be telling the truth, but for me, what this does to the offense is allows them to feel like, hey, you know what? We have Saquon Barkley. Let's use him, as opposed to
where it helps. And this is where I said I thought it was when everybody talked about the receiving aspect of it. You saw the excitement of the receiving aspect of already, but he only had two targets. He's not getting major targets in the passing game. Occasionally, you're going to try to take a shot and take advantage of a matchup, which they were able to do with Isaiah McDuffie. You get them one-on-one, by the way, because A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith are drawing the secondary away from it. That's the impact. That's it. That's it live and in living color, because everybody's worried about AJ. Everybody's worried about Devontae. And then you leak Barkley out and nobody's paying attention. All of a sudden it's Isaiah McDuffie. That's what the Giants didn't have that the Eagles have to take advantage of.
I would ask this then. You know, last year, by the way, Boston Scott was the highest paid running back on the team. They didn't have any feeling that we have to hand in the ball. DeAndre Swift came here with the pedigree of catching the football. They could have had the same mentality of,
they could have,
and they chose not
Barkley,
to.
Don't get me wrong. Barkley's much better than DeAndre Swift.
Yeah.
Although as a receiver, I agree with you. They should have gotten, especially the way they played last season, they should have gotten DeAndre more involved with those bubble screens and things like that. I still believe that. So I don't believe they took advantage of that. But going back to Miles in 2022, he was great.
Very good.
He was great in that season. And if you can replicate that and you can close out games, Nick was talking, I asked him about the 4-minute offense. Remember how many games they would go on those 8-minute drives and just close out? That's what they did.
Yeah.
And if that can continue, then it's going to be special. And we're going to see. But for one game, there was 7 whatever. They left 27 seconds on the clock, 22 seconds after the kickoff. They got the ball. They kept it for 7 minutes and 26 seconds, I think. That's 4-minute perfect football.
Yeah. And, I when they made this signing, it was, I said, hey, look, Miles Sanders had 1,100 yards and 11 touchdowns. I would think the Eagles would be disappointed if Saquon Barkley didn't better those numbers.
That's why I put him at 13. Miles got 1269. So I said, well, Saquon's got to be a little bit better. So I said 13 rushing, 350 passing, 11 total touchdowns. He's off to a good start. To surpass that, obviously, I don't think he's going to get 3 every week, but he's off to a good start. It's all positive, but I mean, this offense will continue to, and people, but if you're a defensive coordinator, that's the brilliant thing. Raheem Morris this week as a defensive coach, what do you do? Where do you start? But I guarantee he starts with AJ.
Yeah, hey, listen, and he can start with AJ, which is not dumb, right? I mean, if you say, who do you got to take away? There's no right answer. I, on Friday's shows, I do, my Friday game balls. I gave the game ball. I went to Smith, was the guy I thought was going to have the big game. And while he didn't have the yardage that jumps off the page, I thought Devontae Smith in that late drive extends that game, extends those drives, I should say, and really came up with the bigger play. You had the one big play from Brown that's obviously the highlight reel play, and we all love the highlight reel play. That's the red zone play. But I'm watching the game, and in the game, Smith makes the big catches, the chain movers, and those were the more important catches in that game to actually seal the deal. So I thought Smith was going to have the big 120-yard big day just because of the matchups. But I thought that was underrated too, that Smith's numbers didn't jump off the page, but the catches.
Oh, he was huge in that drive that I was just talking about. It was Devontae, and he carried 2 tacklers for a first down at his size, which is amazing how physical he can get. But when we were talking on your show, Mike, we were talking about Saquon's touches. They went from 18 to 26 on that last drive. They ran it 8 times. But they only ran it for 15 yards. It had to be Jalen and Devontae Smith converting first downs. That really sealed that game. So it was a team effort. But I think from the optimistic standpoint, they scored 34 points, and the quarterback had one of his worst games ever.
Well, and
they still scored 34 points.
One question, that we were bringing up yesterday, which is this RPO thing kind of dying? Is the league figured this thing out? Because 2 years ago, Hurts seemed to make the right decision every time. Now it seems that every time he does something that's the wrong thing and he just goes down like a ton of bricks, just slides at the line of scrimmage. Have teams figured this out, or is it the Eagles not executing it well?
A little bit of both, as usually. I think throw the field in as well. I think it was more difficult to get your footing, and we'll get a better. But no doubt, teams have gotten better defending it.
Yeah. I think it's time for them to evolve from it, and I think that's what part of the reason Kellen Moore is here.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, he's here to. There's a lot of boy, we got to get to it eventually. There was a lot of bad quarterback play in week 1 in the NFL. A lot of bad quarterback play. And Jalen was graded the worst quarterback in the NFL by a certain company that people don't like. But at least when they talk about bad grades, they love them when they talk about good grades. But
yeah,
I digress.
Like everything else in the world, it's not real unless it's pro for me.
Exactly. Now, again, it's a very small sample size. It's one game, and it all has to do with those turnover-worthy throws. So when you talk about, obviously he performed better than Bryce Young because there was a lot of good. Obviously he was better than Will Levis because there's a lot of good. Obviously he's better than Bo Nix, who was just embarrassingly bad because there was a lot of good from Jalen Hurts along with the bad. Obviously, he was better than Caleb Williams, another rookie, Jaden Daniels. They all played poorly. Daniel Jones was abysmal. He played better than all those quarterbacks. So how does he?
Deshaun Watson might have been the worst of them.
Deshaun Watson. So how is he 32 of 32?
They weigh heavily the turnovers in decision making, correct?
Correct. And that's the point. All of those quarterbacks, as bad as they were, did not have 5 decisions like Jalen Hurts had in one particular game. Now, should that I always compare it to Ryan Howard back in the day. You're a baseball guy, Mike. Ryan Howard may have won 0 for 3 with 3 strikeouts, and then bang, there's the 3-run home run that completely changes the complexion of a game. That's got to be weighted more than the 0 for 3 with 3 strikeouts. So that's the kind of game Jalen Hurts had. Yeah. He's basically look bad, then make a play to make you go over the top. And that relentlessness is a big trait of his game. But while I say that, and that's the optimistic standpoint, and they scored 34 points as poorly as he played, don't jump on the sword. Those decisions are terrible for a veteran quarterback. People jumping on their swords. Even Jalen admits it. He had no problem taking accountability for it. Nick Sirianni, everybody admits it. He cannot continue to make those types of decisions.
Absolutely.
Period.
Right. And it's, this isn't like 2001 where quarterbacks are sitting back there and looking through their progressions anymore. They're basically looking for where to get the ball, 1, 2, 3, get it out. And if that guy's not there, and it felt like he was trying to will these guys open because that's where he was kind of like told to throw the ball. And it's like, hey, it was, especially with the time in the score, like the one thing with Hurts the first year, what we heard about is how much of a leader he is. And that was the one thing. Well, now it's for, the funny part is now people are questioning that, and you're almost looking at his skill set. His skill set was never the strong part of the game. It was the mental part and the skill set. And you have time and score where all you have to do is throw that ball away. And he tries to throw that ball to A.J. Brown. All he has to do is throw it out of the end zone, kick the field goal, and that game's over. So that's a concerning part there is, did he trust himself and his skill set more than what he was, like the smart guy, make the right play, throw it away if I have to? All of that stuff kind of went out the window, and that's what was very frustrating about some of the mistakes that he made.
How much are you concerned about it, Mike, versus how much are you chalking up the week 1 rust and all those things?
Well, like John said, and I know a lot of quarterbacks or former quarterbacks around, Kurt Warner, Troy Aikman, all these guys. I mean, you didn't have to watch you could have watched the red zone to come up with that the quarterback play was not good. Nobody plays in the preseason. You know who did play in the preseason, by the way, was Brock Purdy, threw 12 passes in the 49ers' last preseason game. He was one guy that did get an extended run in the preseason. But nobody's playing until the league, when the Rams won the Super Bowl without playing any preseason, that's when everybody said, well, they can do it. We can do it too. So until there's a shift back the other way where all these teams decide, and I don't think that's going to happen, is the juice worth the squeeze, John? There's a McMullen line that we used to talk about all the time. Is the juice worth the squeeze to play a guy in the third preseason game, which, by the way, is 2 weeks before your opener. So if you're saying I got 12 passes 2 weeks before my opener, was that enough to get me ready for the season? That's not enough to get anybody ready for a season either. So are those 2 series or 3 series worth the potential of getting hurt and losing your quarterback or somebody else to play him? So you're going to see bad quarterback play. This isn't, we talk about all the time now. September is 4 preseason games. Everyone's just trying to stay 2-2 or 3-1, or even 1-3. You're still in the wild card chase. You just don't want to go 0-4 in those first 4 games to try to, get yourselves ready. So yeah, there was rust. There was the field. There's a new offense. And by the way, you had a team across the field who had Super Bowl aspirations as well playing against you. It's not like they lined up against the Carolina Panthers and struggled. They went up against a team that many people think could win the Super Bowl, for God's sakes. And for the most part, I think handled them pretty well for a game where there was no preseason. My quarterback was 32nd in the league, and I got no pass rush from the guy I spent $15 million on.
Yeah, it was. At the end of the day, it's a tremendous win because of the opponent, no doubt about it. But from your standpoint of the preseason play, I think people don't understand that. Like Nick knows it would help limit the sloppiness, but is it worth it? As you mentioned, is that juice worth the squeeze? And the answer is no.
Well, you're damned.
And
if
they
you
want to
do,
get
you're damned
to
if
his.
you don't. If you don't play in the preseason, these guys need to play. They need the bullets firing at them. Well,
yeah, I mean, I think that turnover with the snap, with the fumble. I don't think that happens if you get some preseason reps. But you'd rather have your guys healthy than take away.
Well, to be fair, I mean, we saw a play like that happen in the Super Bowl where it's a bad snap, and that cost them. So
true. Yeah,
I mean, look, the whole preseason thing, especially now, you have 3 preseason games. I was talking about this. Normally, in the old preseason way, you would play a hat tip series in the first one, and maybe a little bit in the second one, and then the third one you played like the whole half.
Yeah.
And then you never
and then
played.
Sometimes you'd even come out because they wanted to replicate coming out of the locker room at halftime. Sometimes they play the first series or 2 of the second half.
And then the fourth one, you wouldn't play any of your starters.
Yeah.
Now, you think about when the Eagles' second preseason game was. That was on a Thursday night back in the middle of August. Like August 15th, I think, was that Thursday night. So you're telling me if the Eagles would have played even a half on August 15th, that would have changed and helped them on September the 6th? I don't see the correlation of how that's doing much for them. Other than potentially getting somebody
common
hurt.
sense to it. And Nick actually played the best thing to shut up any trash talker when you're winning. The old best trash scoreboard. Look at the scoreboard. Yeah. Nick went 4-0. Eagles are 4-0 in season openers under Nick Sirianni. There's only 2 other coaches.
And it goes back to, John, when the Rams won the Super Bowl without playing their guys in the preseason, the rest of the league all said, whoop, we're done.
Yeah. Only 2 other coaches, Mike McDaniel, Jim Harbaugh. So you had the long layoff. Is undefeated in season opening games. So the Eagles are 4-0 in week 1. Is there sloppy football? That's what Nick said. Yeah. Did you watch? I know Mike wasn't watching Red Zone, but everybody else had the opportunity. The Eagles weren't on.
Oh, I had it on.
A lot of stinking sloppy football.
I was forced to watch Red Zone, but against my will. But I had 3 TVs, so the one that had the Red Zone on, I wasn't really watching. We had the 2. I had Pittsburgh, Atlanta in the early window, and Cincinnati, New England. So I had 4 bad football teams really that I watched. They had it was my mother's retirement party. So my cousin comes over and commandeers my TV and signs into his YouTube TV account so we can get Red Zone. I said, I don't want to watch the Red Zone. Put that on somewhere else. I want to get into the game, man. I want to get into the flow of the game. I want to get into the feel of the game. Old school.
That is old school. And Mike, I'm with you though. I like watching a game for a game, not just the Red Zone. But Mike, appreciate you being here today, brother. Good takes on the game. Last question from me. What's your early preview of the Monday night game versus the Falcons? I think Eagles have a good chance to go 2-0 here. What do you think going into that?
I liked the Falcons, and I picked them to win the South. I thought that this is a team last year that probably, with the quarterback play that they had, Desmond Ridder, not very good. The group of quarterbacks down there, they had Bijan Robinson, didn't like the way they used him last year. Drake London, Kyle Pitts, loved that pick a couple years ago. So they have 3 really good weapons. Then they go out and add Judon and Simmons to a defense, Grady Jackson. And I'm thinking, man, this team with Kirk Cousins, this team almost won that division last year. I know it was a down year division-wise. You add Kirk Cousins to that group, you're thinking, all right, now they have a legitimate quarterback. Last year they were going with just a bunch of vagabonds. Now you got a guy who's been to the playoffs. They went from, I think they won 8 games or 7 games last year. Could they go to 9 or 10? I thought getting Cousins, but he looked, man, I did watch a lot of that game. He looked rough, man. He looked like a guy who could not move. Now their defense is pretty good. They had a tough day running around with Fields, but Fields doesn't make a lot of plays with his arms. He runs around a lot.
He's brutal too.
He's brutal a lot.
Should have added him into the mix.
John, another point of the whole preseason. We're trying to use the preseason as an excuse for some of these guys. There's 10 to 12 quarterbacks in this league who have no business being starting quarterbacks at this stage of their careers.
Including all the
no business being quarterbacks at this stage. Now, maybe somewhere down the line, Anthony Richardson is horrendous. He cannot throw. He could throw the ball 70 yards and be on the red zone and wow you. But if you take off the red zone and watch him throw, it ain't good. It's not good.
Well, that's the thing about watching games, Mike. People have gotten into this highlight mindset. So they see the Anthony Richardson play, and which just wows people.
Which was an insane play, by the way.
Yes, it was. He threw that ball 70 yards in the air with a guy on his ankle.
Yeah,
but the play-to-play consistency is
terrible.
Awful.
Guys are wide open. He can't hit them. They're in stride over the middle. He can't connect with them. He went 9 for 19. They only let him throw the ball 19 times. He couldn't even complete 10 of them. It was sad to watch.
Well, that's what Aikman and Kirk Herbstreit were all talking about it. Kurt Warner. Man, the quarterback play in this league is taking a big dip.
Yeah. But Zander, to go back to the Falcons, they had a really, really bad offensive showing. But you know how week to week this is. Is that their rusty game? Did they kind of get their kinks out? They should progress because they do have weapons. I mean, you got Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, Drake London.
Bijan played well. He was the only one who played well.
And their defense has some playmaker. Grady Jackson's always been a problem for the Eagles. So I think it's going to be, I think on the surface, you're just like, the Falcons. But I think that they should build off of, they lost the game.
I have a feeling Justin Simmons is going to make a play to get Eagles fans just incensed.
I do like Judon, though. Nice pickup by them.
Yeah, he's a good player, definitely.
Yeah. So it should be, but injuries are a big thing. Kirk Cousins tore his Achilles in late October last year.
And he looked like it.
Yes,
and he's 36 years old. The assumption that you're just going to be back, everything's fine. People don't know how a lot of people don't know how difficult these rehabs are. He does not look like himself. No. And that'll be a positive for the Eagles. And the pass rush, Mike, they got a stationary target. No excuses this week for that pass rush.
Well, you're at home too. You're at home. feeling a lot better about the surface that you're
I
on.
can't
Although
wait to
wasn't
not
the
talk about
surface-
the surface anymore. Oh,
Wasn't
my
the
gosh.
surface in Sao Paulo supposedly the same surface that both the Eagles and the Packers use?
Both the Eagles and Packers, but it's kept differently because soccer is a different game or football is a different game than American football.
I saw some conflicting reports that they did change out the soccer field and it was just super wet and that's what made it slippery. But I don't know. It looks so crappy. It's tough
Well,
to
I
say
thought
that was.
during the game, I thought it was during the game. I thought Eskin tweeted that it
Yeah,
didn't
he
have
did.
anything
That's
to
what
do
I
with
saw,
the
Mike,
field,
yeah.
that it was condensation because it was so humid that was making the field wet and slippery, that it wasn't actually the surface, but it was so hot down there that it was moisture.
Yeah, I saw that too from Eskin. Mike,
Yeah, I
thanks
think
for-
he went at TJ Watt, right?
Yeah,
JJ Watt.
JJ Watt. That's
JJ.
exactly what I saw. Yeah, so make sure you guys follow Mike on X at Mike Gill Show. Listen to his show on 97.3 ESPN, the best sports show in all of South Jersey. Mike, thanks for joining the show today, man. We appreciate your insight as always. We'll talk to you next week, all right, brother?
See you guys.
Thanks,
There's
Mike.
Mike Gill joining the show. Great stuff from Mike Gill there on Birds 365. Always brings a great element to the show. Johnny Mac, love talking to Mike Gill. We'll have Brandon Lee Gowton in about 12 minutes or so. So we don't have too much time here. Johnny Mac, I do want to give everybody an update. By the way, everybody's like, did he claim the jersey yesterday? So I did give away the jersey yesterday. It was claimed by Mr. Fleming. And a good, a nice little, a good thing of this, right? Mr. Fleming reached out to me and he says, I'm going to give the jersey to my grandson. So a nice gesture from Mr.
Nice.
Fleming.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was
Nice.
happy to hear that. So we gave away the jersey. I did already order it and right from the NFL shop, right to Bill Fleming. So he's going to get that jersey hopefully soon. Fanatics is crazy. In the world of 2-day shipping, Johnny Mac, Fanatics is still like, oh, we'll talk to you in a few weeks. I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of sorry, Michael Rube, but
Yeah, I'm not either.
many people now I don't buy jerseys. But fans complain to me all the time. I hope everything's okay because they package things with the wrong numbers and misplaced spellings.
Yeah, it's goofy.
Yeah, Michael Rubin, dude, get that fixed. Come on.
Yeah, no doubt. But anyway, the jersey was given away yesterday. I want to thank and welcome, just thank everybody, all of our members and all of our non-members as well. But really, our members who participated yesterday, John. We went to a members only chat when you left yesterday. It was a lot of fun. So I talked to the members for about 20 minutes. We had a great time giving away the jersey, and I hope we give away another one this week. I think. Saquon, I think he's got another game here where he could have a big game. So hopefully we'll give away another jersey this week. Mr. Perez, it was William Fleming Sr. was the man who won the jersey. And as I mentioned, he got back to me. He confirmed his account and everything, and he's giving it to his 10-year-old grandson, who's a massive Eagles fan. So definitely great stuff. William, if you're listening, great stuff by you. So we'll take a commercial break, Johnny Mac. BLG coming up in hour number 2. And then one question for you on the other side of the break.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
He's blocked well and tries to cut through the middle. Oh!
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on Sports Grid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on Sports Grid.
Score and save at Southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, Birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer three major services. The first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Heading down the shore. Have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wild wood day.
Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
EAGLES. Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to a Wednesday edition of Birds 365. Preparing now for that Monday night football game against the Atlanta Falcons. They are coming into the link, so it'll be really the Eagles' home opener. I know they were the home team in Sao Paulo, but when you have to travel 4,000 miles to be the home team, you're not really the home team, Johnny Mac. So they'll start off their home season at the link on Monday night versus the Falcons. Johnny Mac, I want to ask you about two guys that we talked about a lot coming into the season. And that's the two guys in the middle on the defense. That's Jordan Davis and that's Jalen Carter. I know the field. I understand that that's the big mulligan right now in week one. But are you concerned at all about the conditioning aspect of those two players after week one? It was probably the biggest question. I don't think ability is the question on these two guys. I think it's conditioning. I think it's being able to play late in the season and late in games. Are you still concerned about that as we enter week two?
No, not yet. I mean, Jalen played 51 snaps, so that's a lot. And he was still, the big play at the end where Jordan Love got hurt, unfortunately, was one of his best plays of the night, being relentless and getting him down there with the help of Josh Sweat as well. And Jordan was at 35 and a different role, nose tackle. He doesn't play as much in the 4-man fronts. So that number's pretty good. And I didn't, from I don't think he played well. I don't think either of them played well.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised to hear Mike say he thought Jordan Davis played his best game as an Eagle.
I don't think anybody played well on the front except for Brandon Graham. And there were some, other guys. Milton Williams was okay. Josh was okay. Josh Sweat. I think Jordan, especially with the expectations, and Jalen Carter certainly did not play well. But, I don't know how to evaluate this game. Nolan Smith is well priced up, which we talked about, the edge rushers. Obviously didn't play well. I'm being the same with Bryce Huff as Jalen Carter. I mean, I don't think you can fairly evaluate this game. What complicates it is the fact that two players played well. Zach Bond very well. Zach Bond and Reed Blankenship and others played well. Brandon played well. And there were moments from Quinyon I thought played pretty well, which is ironic because, the numbers say they didn't play well. And for all the talk about, one of the things, the Eagles had a huge advantage in plays run offensively. I think the number was 74. Trying to look it up real quick. 74-58. So they were plus 16 in offensive plays. And Green Bay had 414 yards, and they had 410. Green Bay had 7.1 yards per play to their 5.5, which is not good. And a lot of that had to do with the explosive plays, 70-yard touchdown, on and on and on. But, Yeah, I don't think the defense played well. It was really a strange game.
It was an odd game.
Because they did play well early, which we said the 2 stops were great. And then the individual, you're like, well, Zach played really well. Zach Vaughn. Reed played really well. Quignon, a lot of positive signs. As I mentioned, BG played well. Slay, I think, played well. So 2 veteran guys. So it's just a weird game. But overall, they're giving up chunk plays all over the place. And I think about Jordan Love's inaccuracy and, how many drops did Dontavian Wicks have? Which the balls were a little bit off kilter, and that could have been 20, 30-yard gash gains on 3 different plays if Jordan Love is just his normal accurate self. So very, very weird game. Very weird game.
Yeah,
a lot of meat left on the bone.
Yeah. No, for sure. Falcons do have that Bijan Robinson, though, Johnny Mac. I think he does present a threat in that running game. How do they mitigate him coming into this game? He's a good player.
Yeah, he's a very good player.
A lot of ties to Birds 365 for those who don't know. Once upon a time, this show was called Bijan 365.
Yeah, a lot of people wanted him for the same reason. That they want Saquon Barkley, the passing game, and all that. Look, with all running backs, with the exception of one guy, with all running backs, that's always overrated. It's always overblown. And the same was, and Bijan was as good as you can get for the number 2 spot as a rookie. And he's, as good as a pass rushing back as your pass catching back as you're going to get in the modern NFL. But there's certain limitations because they still have Drake London. They want to get the ball to Drake London. They're the same as the Eagles. They want to get the ball to Kyle Pitts. They want to get the ball to Mooney, who they signed to a big free agent contract. They want to get the ball to all these people before they get the ball to the running back. Now, is it nice to have a running back who can do some things when you get to that point? Of course, you just saw it with Saquon Barkley and the wheel routes. But at the end of the day, the traffic was the traffic. They targeted him twice, and that's going to be what you see. But Bijan was very good in week 1. Looked like the Falcons' best offensive player. And he probably is. So that's the guy I would start with. Especially after watching Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, I don't think Kirk is the same.
I don't think Kirk is healthy. I don't think he's ready. I don't think he should be out there. And they're going to have to rely on Bijan Robinson. And if I'm Vic Fangio, I'm going to try to take advantage of the limitations of the quarterback. So I think the passing game being less effective, despite having some good players, as I mentioned, because London's good, Pitts is good, Mooney's good. They should be on paper a very good offense, but I don't think the quarterback is ready.
Yeah, he didn't look it, man. He did not trust that foot at all in that game. It was tough to watch. And I'm more of a Kirk Cousins fan than most. I will admit that. I've always
he's been a very good quarterback.
He's been a very good quarterback. I think in a way he's underrated because he doesn't have any of the hardware. He doesn't, he struggles sometimes in prime time or whatever the knock is on him. But the guy throws for a lot of yards every stinking year. He can move the football, and he just didn't look like the same Kirk Cousins.
No.
And when you're analyzing the game, I think that obviously plays to the Eagles' favor in a big way.
Yeah, and give credit to TJ Watt as well. I mean, there's a defensive player of the year candidate basically every year, and he wrecked the game. And when that kind of stuff happens, the Eagles don't have that player, so maybe it gets a little bit easy. But in the case of Bijan, he ran it for 68 yards, not great. They threw it to him 5 times. He caught 5 passes for 43 yards. So you see that ability. But again, there's limitations there. Even in that instance, there's limitations. And you want to get the ball to London, who only had 2 catches. Mooney only had 1 catch. They couldn't get the ball, 1 catch, couldn't get the ball outside the numbers. And doesn't matter how good Bijan is. If you can't get the ball outside, you look like Atlanta looked.
Yeah, no doubt. Let's get to our next commercial break real quick. We'll take a quick 3-minute break. I see our man BLG in the green room. Looking forward to talking to Brandon Lee Gowton. Coming up next on Birds 365. Make sure you guys hit that like button. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
He's blocked well and tries to cut through the middle. Oh!
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on Sports Grid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on Sports Grid.
Score and save in Southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, Birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer three major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Heading down the shore. Have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wildwood day.
Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to a Wednesday edition of Birds 365. Joined now by Brandon Lee Gowton of Bleeding Green Nation. BLG, welcome to the show, man. How you doing on this Wednesday morning?
What's up, guys?
BLG, I'm going to ask you. I've asked a bunch of people. How do you evaluate that game? I kind of throw it out. The field was so awful. You know, on one hand, I say that, and that's where I want to go with it. And I have with a bunch of players, especially the pass rush. On the other hand, I say, well, Zach Bond performed. Reed Blankenship performed. How do you do it? How do you evaluate this game?
Yeah, I think there was some uneven elements to this game, and a game, like you said, where the field somehow being a story again for the Eagles, NFL, $190 billion industry or whatever, and they can't get a field right somehow multiple times. Incredible. I think the big picture takeaway for me is that they certainly did not play their A game, as they often did not last year. And despite that, especially on offense, they still scored 34 points. They were the botched snap at the end there away from being up 38, going to 38 points, and 410 yards of offense, despite, again, 3 turnovers and not playing their A game. So could be a lot worse.
Defensively, similar to that, you mentioned the 410 yards, and the Eagles ran 16 more plays, I believe, than the Packers, who had 414 yards. And by the way, there was a bunch of Jordan Love missed passes, inaccurate passes. There was some Dontavian Wicks drops. He had a really poor game. And you start to think, boy, man, there was some meat left on that bone. So I say, not good from the defensive perspective. But then you boil it down. And I say, well, I was impressed. I talked about that. How could you not be impressed by Zach Bond? I was impressed by Reed Blankenship. I was impressed by Quinyon Mitchell. So all these individual positives early in the game, they stopped him in the red zone twice, huge positives that kept him in the game. And then you got all the gas plays, and I'm like, this could have been bad. Where are you with Vic Fangio's defense?
Well, I had high expectations for this Packers offense. I thought Jordan Love is going to be really good this year, and a lot of those players who are young, youngest team in the league last year, taking a step forward. So, some of that I think is the Packers being a really good team. Obviously, some of it is that the Eagles have to clean some things up. But I guess ultimately, when the offense turns the ball over 3 times like they did, and as a defense, you're able to settle in and only allow 9 points off of that. And that's with 2 drives starting within plus territory, one at the 19-yard line, the other one at the 13 there, just so close to the end zone to be able to settle down and hold up in the red zone. Ultimately, I consider that a big win, especially early on where, they only go down 6-0 instead of something like 14-0. And I just think that the whole game is different at that point in terms of the momentum, the feel, the strategy. I just think to be able to hold the Packers offense to those 6 points early made the game within reach. And that I think that kind of gave the Eagles confidence to be able to climb back into that.
How encouraged were you, BLG, by the Quinyon Mitchell start, rookie first rounder? I thought he looked pretty good out there. What did you see from Quinyon Mitchell? How encouraged were you by his start?
Yeah, we saw this in training camp where, he looked really encouraging. And I thought it was a really good sign early on. He has that play deep down the field against Christian Watson. And obviously, not only does he have good coverage, but he also starts chirping at him afterwards.
Yeah. And that's Philly in him, BLG.
Well, it's kind of funny because we've heard, from Devontae and AJ that Quinyon likes to talk trash. And we've seen him in camp, be demonstrative at times. But it's just so funny to see like the forward-facing element of that guy who seems pretty calm and doesn't have a whole lot to say always in front of the microphone, but he clearly can turn it up when he needs to. And I think that's, a great quality to have in a cornerback.
Going into the game, I think it surprised a bunch of fans. It shouldn't have, that Nakobe Dean was going to be the starting linebacker. And I think that stays the same, even though I thought Nakobe had some splash plays. I don't think he had a consistent game, but I'm going to give him a mulligan. But he's a starting linebacker, so I don't think they're going to reverse course to Devin White that early. Isaiah Rodgers, though, that he was close to playing, couldn't play with the hand injury. Boy, I got to see Quinyon outside, BLG. We talked about that a lot. I said I'd leave him there. That's where he should be. Now that Vic Fangio's seen him, Isaiah Rodgers is probably going to be back Monday night because he was close to playing in week 1. Are you going to upset the apple cart and start moving him around, or are you just going to keep him outside?
Well, I think it comes down to, I think you have to find a way to get Avonte Maddox off of the field. He clearly struggled. The Packers were going after him. They saw him at a weak point clearly at times in that matchup. He ended up playing 90% of the snaps. I think some of that is because, how often the Packers are going to use their receivers like they do. But that's just a lot of snaps. And I think the way Vic talked about it previously was about getting your best players on the field. And I'd rather see Isaiah Rodgers playing on the field more than I would see Avonte Maddox, at least when it comes to cornerback. Obviously safeties, it might be a different story there. So I think they kind of have to rework that configuration there. And I know that necessarily wouldn't be ideal. All of a sudden that you're moving Quinyon around. Ideally, it seems like you would like to have gotten maybe Isaiah Rodgers some snaps there in the slot in the offseason to maybe have him kind of play that role.
What's the aversion to that?
I don't know.
It's weird. He looks like a slot corner.
Yep.
I mean, obviously there's a lot of run fits. Maybe he's just not good in run support.
Maybe.
I can't figure out why they won't at least try it. Because I don't want to see Isaiah Rodgers matched up with Mike Evans down the road or one of those giant receivers outside. Yeah, it's bizarre to me. BLG, that and Indy didn't do it either, but they had a good nickel. Maybe that factored into it. It's strange to me that the Eagles won't at least, and maybe they will. Maybe they'll start cross training now. But how about door number C? Throw Cooper in the deep end of the pool. Let him be the slot corner. That's where they're going anyway. Let's throw him in the deep end. See if he holds up.
Yeah, I think they're going to ultimately, I think that's ultimately what's going to happen. I still don't think, what we've seen from him, at least in the preseason early on, that he is ready to play something like, 90% of the snaps like Maddox did. I get, there is a startup cost and you have to do that. I think there's probably a way there where, you can up his snap count without totally just having him do that from the jump. I don't think he's quite ready for that. So maybe it's more of a split between him and Maddox. Maybe that would make more sense. But yeah, the big takeaway there is they have to figure it out where Maddox isn't on the field quite that much.
BLG, let's go offense. I think you pointed it out a little bit in your opening thoughts, just 34 points with 3 turnovers. I mean, it clearly shows the potential of this offense, but I want to focus in on Saquon Barkley, who made his Eagles debut, 3 touchdowns. What did you think of what you saw from Saquon Barkley and how good this offense can be when you add an element like that to the backfield?
Yeah, I mean, I've been skeptical of the Saquon addition here being this revolutionary thing. And look, credit to him. He checked every single box I feel like you could ask for in this game. I mean, he ran physical at times to pick up extra yards through contact. He ran, he was an elusive runner at times. He made cuts, made defenders miss. He caught the ball. Pass protection obviously holds up in that regard. He basically did everything you could realistically ask for. He had the high IQ at the end of the game to make sure he jumps on that snapped brotherly shove exchange. Like Saquon did it all, and he got in the end zone 3 times, which has to be sickening if you're John Mara or Joe Shane.
Joe Shane, I've said it, BLG, and Brian Daboll are not surviving this. No. They are not going to survive this.
Especially when it's so public, and not keeping it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously when you talk about the 3 touchdowns and, now the difference is the context, but people don't care. I mean, if you look at the wheel route, half of the Packers back 7, they ran those 2 in-breaking routes to Devontae and AJ, just took them all out of the play. And you have Saquon leaking out with poor Isaiah McDuffie. That's what you want. That's what Howie Roseman was envisioning. That's perfect. But the Giants can't do that. I mean, you could go up and do a dissertation and say, we don't have the players to do that. You can't build the foundation on this. But boy, as a complimentary piece, it's spectacular.
Yeah, and whose fault is it, by the way, that the Giants don't have those other players? I mean, that's
part of it as well.
That's part of the problem.
But I would say, BLG, the philosophy of building on a running back in this era is a poor philosophy. So I think 2 things could be correct.
Right.
He's a great fit for the Eagles. Very poor fit as a foundational piece of the New York Giants. They tried it for 6 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of my big things with Saquon, too, coming out of this game is just how much the Eagles used him. And, there was a lot of talk about that. We're really going to use him heavily. The expectation, some reports in the offseason, okay, this is the Christian McCaffrey blueprint. And that's just not how the Eagles have operated for a very long time. Even in the heyday of LaShawn McCoy, his best season, he's not getting that kind of workload like that Christian McCaffrey is getting last year. I mean, few running backs really do or have. So I was kind of let me see it before I fully believe it when it comes to the Eagles and how they use their running backs. And Saquon in his first game, and it's 1 game, so we'll see if this continues. But the way the Eagles used him is just more heavily than they've done in years past. I mean, last year you're looking at that week 2 game that DeAndre Swift had. When you're talking about that kind of many touches, Saquon had the most touches since that game, and he had the highest snap count played since Miles Sanders, I think, back during the 2022 season at one point. So to me, this is just that they're willing to use him that much. They proved it, and they're not just talking about it.
Any concerns, BLG, how long he holds up to? That's a lot of touches for Saquon. I mean, I don't know. You're not going to legislate injury, but I'm one of the people I'd rather have Saquon playing his best football after Thanksgiving, going into the playoffs. Now, like I said, you can't legislate the injury part of it, But any concern that he won't be able to hold up with that type of workload, for all season.
Yeah, again, going back to what I just said in terms of like how the organization has used the back, I'm still a little skeptical that this is going to be the case every single game.
Right,
So I do think, like you're saying, they very much have that playoff, vision in mind of not totally burning him out before then. But I think it's going to, between those things where they're going to rely on him heavily, and obviously, game script and whatnot, and how the game is going, and there's going to be different things that dictate that. And there's going to be certain matchups where, it might be a much more heavy passing game than it is a running game. So I think they're going to be aware of that. But I also think, again, it's very much true that they're very much more comfortable leaning on him if they have to, if they want to, than they were with DeAndre Swift or Miles Sanders or really anyone in the past so many years.
Yeah. And I was with you, BLG. I was skeptical. But I always thought, look, 4-minute offense, that's why he's here, to close games. And I think if you look at it from that standpoint, they had the 7.5-minute drive essentially where he touched it 8 times. So 18 touches goes to 26 touches because of the flow of the game. And if you're tied or you're down 3, that's probably going to evaporate. So some of it's going to take care of itself. The number of touches. They were trying to close this game and actually did very effectively. Although it was Devontae Smith more successfully in that final drive. But that goes from 18 to 26. I will say, though, for people that didn't notice, he got banged up at the end of the first half, and it was all Kenny Gainwell at the end of the first half. So maybe that 18 would have been 22 if he didn't get banged up. He also got banged up. 26 touches every week is not sustainable for anybody, I think, in the modern NFL running back. Agree or disagree?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, even Christian McCaffrey did that last year.
He's hurt, by the way.
That's the point. Exactly. Yeah, let's see how that holds up over the course of a bigger sample size, more than just one season. And yeah, that's where the concern starts to come in. So yeah, again, I don't think he's going to be quite at 24 carries every week here. But again, the fact that the Eagles are willing to go to that extent when they have to, and look, this was, a key game against a top opponent in the conference. I'm sure they were willing to lean into him a little bit more heavily here, especially setting the tone early on in the season, as opposed to maybe, they're playing an AFC team at some point and they can kind of take a different approach. And obviously, again, too, it's just going to be different players' games. I'm sure there's going to be a game where, again, AJ or Devontae are just leaning more on them. So yeah, I think really, though, just encouraging debut, and certainly kind of makes you buy into the idea that Saquon is going to have a huge impact on this offense.
Go ahead. Toggle. Go ahead.
One of the concerns, obviously, BLG, coming out of the game is the 3 turnovers. Hurts' 2023 season, many said it wasn't a bad season. He just turned the ball over too much. Kind of off to a bad start here with the turnovers. What's your level of concern on Jalen Hurts turning the ball over like he did and the decisions he made in that Friday game?
Yeah, it's interesting to parse because I think he made some really key plays in that game, of course, with the touchdown passes to Saquon, to AJ. Obviously, AJ did a lot of the run after the catch there, but I thought Hurts put him in a position to be able to get those yak. And the drive at the end of the game, incredibly clutch throws, the big run where he runs through contact. So I don't want to crush him and say, he didn't contribute to the win, because he clearly did. Right. But, I mean, those turnovers, and especially the one where he throws into the end zone, he's trying to make a play, throwing across his body that gets picked off by Jair Alexander there. I mean, it's unacceptable to me. That's unforgivable. The first one early in the game, not that you love to see it if you're the Eagles, but, okay, he was trying to make a play. That's going to happen over the course of a game. He got too aggressive. It wasn't the right decision, but he tried to make a play in a situation where it's the beginning of the game, trying to make something good happen. In the situation that he throws that second interception, he just almost throws a pick six, maybe even on the play before.
Yeah.
So, why is there no wherewithal to be hey, I got to rein it in. Oh, I survived that one. Let me rein it in here. Be especially careful when we're up 5 points. Worst case scenario here, other than the turnover, is I throw it out of bounds or whatever. I run for a little bit. We kick a field goal. We go up 8 points all of a sudden. that you can live with that. You cannot live with turning the ball over there. Dating back to week 1 last season, Jalen has 23 giveaways in 19 games played. Like, he's got to figure this part out. This has been, prior to last year, thought like, okay, Jalen's good. Maybe he's not good at some things. One thing he is good at is taking care of the football. And he just hasn't been since the beginning of last season.
It's troubling. It's problematic. There was a bunch of bad quarterback play around the NFL in week 1, bunch of sloppy play. Troy Aikman talked about it. I'm sure you saw Kirk Herbstreit, bunch of guys. Kurt Warner talking about how poor the quarterback play. Bryce Young was out there. Will Levis, Daniel Jones, the rookies, Caleb Williams, Bo Nix looked atrocious. Jaden Daniels, except for the athleticism, no consistency throwing the football. Deshaun Watson, if you want to go the veteran route, was abysmal. And of all those quarterbacks, PFF ranked Jalen Hurts number 32 of 32. Now, I'm going to spin this optimistically. For 1 week, like, you can add up all those quarterbacks as poorly as they played. They didn't make 4 turnover-worthy throws like Jalen Hurts. That's why the grade is so low. So that's the bad part. That's got to get better, BLG. People have to stop jumping on their swords for this guy. That is not, I like your word, it's not acceptable. It is not acceptable. But while I say that, here's the positive. I remember Vic, leading up to the game, called Green Bay an all-day sucker, meaning the offense, you got to play 60 minutes or they're going to bite you in the ear. That's Jalen Hurts, man. You can have them bogged down, and they had them bogged down making bad decisions, bad plays. And then at the end of the game, when you need it, as you mentioned, he makes the run through contact, makes 2 big throws to Devontae Smith. It's amazing that he can put the bad stuff behind him and still make those plays. According to PFF, that was his worst game as a starting quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles from a grade standpoint. His worst game. And they scored 34 points. That's pretty amazing. Because he's going to get better. I think it's a positive. No?
Yeah, I think that, it's where he goes from here that I'm really interested to see. And I have the expectation, because I guess part of what made, the struggles concerning too in training camp. I mean, we obviously, everyone can, kind of laugh at, oh, no interceptions until the last day. Yeah. But like, bigger than that to me was always, he wasn't putting the ball in harm's way, really, for a few exceptions. And then to see that so early on in this game, it was just like, how is this the same player that I watched in training camp? So I'm going to tend to believe that the bigger sample that I did see of camp, and not just this game, I'm still willing to give him some benefit of the doubt there. I think he's going to play better in week 2 and moving forward. And if he does, people will very quickly forget about this week 1 performance where he had the turnovers. I think that will be in the past if he can put it behind him quickly. If it continues to be an issue, then the sample size continues of dating back to the beginning of last year and all these turnovers, and that's going to be pretty troubling at that point. But right now, I think that's fair to say that, the point out the resiliency there, because there's a lot of quarterbacks who would crumble and not be able to recover from that and just continue to turn it over and do nothing. So absolutely give him credit there. I think now it's about how he builds on that performance.
Yeah, I mean, look, I like the resiliency too, and I agree with you guys, but 23 turnovers in his last 18 games starting, it's just not championship football. I mean, if you're talking about a team that has not aspirations to make the playoffs or be a good team, right? This is a team that Howie has built this thing to get back to the Super Bowl. Turning the ball over that much is just not championship football, so hopefully he can clean it up, but overall, a lot of turnovers recently for Jalen Hurts, dating back to last year as well. BLG, let's turn our sights ahead to that Monday night game. Falcons did not look that good in week 1. Kirk Cousins did not look the same. What's your early preview on the Eagles and what they need to do to go 2-0 here and start the season off strong?
Yeah, I mean, the Falcons lost to a team that didn't score a touchdown. I mean, the Steelers did not score a touchdown.
I should have mentioned Justin Fields when I was talking about bad quarterback play. I should have added him in there.
Yeah, couldn't complete a pass over the middle of the field. And the Falcons lost to that team at home. They were 4.5-point favorites in that game, and they lost at home and did not really even
TJ Watt, baby.
I mean,
Wreck
that is
game.
That
Wreck
is a huge
that
deal.
game.
Yeah, having him is obviously a big deal. And I guess credit to the Falcons defense at some level for keeping the Steelers out of the end zone. I think a lot of that, though, is the Steelers not really exactly having the most dynamic offense, especially when Fields is back there passing. Yeah, I mean, I think like Kirk Cousins clearly, as you said, doesn't look right. The numbers here, he wasn't under center at all. When in over most of his career, he spends a decent amount of time under center. Falcons ran a lot of pistol, which is, again, something Kirk Cousins has not done. He was only on the run 3.8% of the time. That's like way below where he's at usually in his career. Not that he's, a big time runner, but just to not even be on the move at all is crazy. And it just speaks to the fact that he's not fully healthy coming off this Achilles recovery. That is apparent again in those numbers I showed you. It was apparent in the eye test. So, I mean, it just seems to me like, hey, the Eagles have been able to beat Kirk Cousins in week 2 each of the past 2 years. And that's been
weird. It
is very weird how it keeps happening. Yeah. And that was a much healthier version of Kirk Cousins. I mean, this guy who seems kind of like a sitting duck, I just like that I feel like it's you have to be able to shut him down.
To that point, I've given the pass rush a mulligan for that week 1 game because I think the field was such a disaster. You can't evaluate it correctly. Here you have, as you mentioned, and there's this weird, I think, he tore his Achilles in late October last year. I looked it up, late October. And I think the assumption is, oh, he's back, he's fine. He ain't fine. They, these rehabs are not just, he's not the same guy. So from the Eagles pass rush perspective, they got a stationary target who's not healthy, he's uncertain. If Bryce Huff and Nolan Smith and those guys, and Jalen Carter to a certain degree as well, because I don't think he played well, if they don't show up this week, then we got to start saying, is this pass rush going to be good enough? Agree or disagree?
Yeah, the way I would put it is I feel like I didn't really learn anything about the Eagles pass rush from week 1, in part because, I saw it too. I saw their reps where guys are just slipping. And it's like, okay, this reminds me of the Super Bowl. So I'm not ready to say anything definitive other than it's concerning when you pay Bryce Huff, was it 3 years?
51. Yeah, 51.
And he is getting out-snapped by Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham, and I know it was only one more snap, but still Nolan Smith. Like when he's the 4th edge rusher in terms of playing time and didn't really do much at all with that playing time, at least in the box score. He had 1 assisted tackle, no other stats. I don't think he had a pressure. Maybe he had 1 at most.
No, I think he got shut out. It was a clean sheet worthy of a soccer field, pitch. Yeah.
That's not good. That's not to the point where I'm saying, oh, he's a bust. He can't possibly recover from that, but it's a pretty bad start. And I think, to your point here, John, I mean, when you have a quarterback here who's now a stationary target, I mean, feels like you got to get after him.
Yeah, no doubt. BLJ, expectations for the season. Did they go up or down after the week 1 win in Sao Paulo, Brazil?
So I had them losing that game since it came out. I thought the Packers were going to be a tough opponent. I think that kind of held up, obviously. The Eagles were even better ultimately. And I had the Eagles going 13-4, which I felt like was a little high.
Oh, now you got to go 14-3.
Well, right.
That's where I was at, man.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it there for now because I think that was a really big picture, like impressive win to get, even if the style points weren't fully there, to be able to beat that Packers team and have that tiebreaker, which could end up being valuable. We'll see, especially as it relates to, Love and what happens with him.
We just talked about TJ Watt, so I'll end it there. At Brandon Gowton, make sure you follow Brandon on X. Read him, bleedinggreennation.com. He and his staff do a tremendous job covering this team there. Defensive Player of the Year, TJ Watt or Zach Bond. Go.
The Zach Bond thing is just insane how we got here. Like how we got to this point of he was supposed to apparently be, according to himself, be playing, as an edge rusher. And then he
accidentally... Yeah, that's funny. He himself said it. And then Vic's like, We're going to scrap that.
That's a big win for Vic. Yeah. I mean, I think he probably believed in him more than anyone, and it paid off at least week 1.
Yeah. Tremendous performance. And that's why it makes it so hard. You're talking about you're upping your predictions. I can't take anything from this game. I don't know what to take from this game because of the field. The NFL should be ashamed of itself.
Yeah.
So this is sort of like week 1 for me. And I'll get a better feel of what this team is, really. Other than it's good to beat a team that's supposed to be an NFC contender. That part of it's great. But I don't think you learn that much. I agree with you. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think, getting back home here at the Link against the Falcons team that doesn't seem to be that great. I mean, this should be a game they didn't have at all last year, basically, like the take care of business game. Like, just don't even make it competitive. Don't screw. I don't think the Falcons can come in here and beat the Eagles. I think the Eagles are quite capable of beating the Eagles and making mistakes and making it more of a game than it should be. But I think if this team wants to separate themselves again from the team that were last year, where it was just never easy for them at any point, and they would have some games on their schedule like they did in 2022, where it's like, okay, we should be able to just take care of business and roll all over this team. And if they come out,
you got to beware of Bijan. This was
sure.
for about 2 months. We renamed the show Bijan 365.
Right.
So beware of Bijan.
Well, he'll be unstoppable. I'm sure he'll. They can't possibly do anything against him. That's a guy you have to draft early in the first round.
BLG joining the show. Make sure you guys follow BLG on X at Brandon Gowton. Read all of his work at Bleeding Green Nation, one of the best sites for Eagles news. BLG, thanks for joining the show today, man. We'll talk to you again next week. All right, brother?
See you guys.
Thanks, bud.
BLG joining the show. Great stuff from BLG there, Johnny Mac. Good show today from both of our guests. I thought Mike Gill was good. He had some interesting takes, Mike Gill, today. I was surprised at the Jordan Davis one sticking out to me, but BLG brought some great insight as well. We'll take one more commercial break here on Birds 365. Come back. We got 6 minutes to go. So we'll take a commercial break, and then we'll put our final thoughts on this Wednesday edition of Birds 365. By the way, before I do that, make sure you guys hit that like button. We're up to 100 likes. Can we get to, let's say, 120 before the show is out? If you guys are enjoying the content, smash that like button. Birds 365. We'll be right back.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on Sports Grid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on Sports Grid.
Score and save in southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer three major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Heading down the shore, have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wildwood day.
Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to the Birds 365, closing out this Wednesday edition, moving right along here, getting ready for that Monday night game, a little bit of a mini bye for the Eagles as they play on a Friday night, which was weird in itself, right, for the NFL to play on a Friday, and then they play on a Monday night, so definitely a little bit of a mini bye here. Johnny Mack, any closing thoughts as we wrap up this Wednesday edition of the show?
Yeah, can't wait to get on a regular schedule. I feel like Nick explains the screwy schedule every week, and it'd be nice to get on a Sunday schedule so everything could be normal and you know, sort of getting that preparation. And that's part of being relevant is you have all these strange games. They want to put them in a prime time standalone game in South America on a Friday night. And then because you're in that standalone game on a Friday night, the first game in South America, they give you an extra day on a Monday night, which is also a prime time game. It'll be nice to get to Sunday at 1:00 where you can have a regular week of preparation, what NFL players are used to. But that's the new NFL, and if you're good, you gotta persevere in these situations because your weeks are going to be a little bit crazy from that perspective, and you got to figure out a way to maximize the time you do have, and maybe that's an advantage of stepping back away from the offensive game planning. Maybe that turns out to be an advantage when it comes to preparation during the week and being able to handle some of those logistics better by Nick Sirianni. That could be a silver lining, just speculating, but it's a bigger deal than people realize because I think what goes on during the week has more of an impact than what people realize to the finished product on the field on game.
Right, and there's no
day,
real flow created without that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I see what you're saying for sure. So we'll monitor that. Looking forward, though, to the Monday night game. John, last question of the day. Bryce Huff, will he play more than 45% of the snaps on Monday night?
Yeah, I think so. You know, we talked about that. And I said it wasn't a big deal to, you know, because of the numbers. I think Brandon might have been at 32. Nolan might have been at 31. He might have been he was at 30, somewhere like that. So he's like a snap behind Nolan Smith and a few behind Brandon Graham. I don't think it was that big of a deal. And that's sort of the same. Essentially, Nick said the exact same thing. But if it continues, I mean, then you start having legitimate questions. I do think it makes sense. Like, I don't care as much about, like, everybody's worried about him turning into a 3-down player. If you can get that out of Brandon Graham as a better run defender, why wouldn't you use it? If Brandon's healthy and ready to go and he can handle the snaps, why wouldn't you utilize that? If he gets the quarterback, nobody's going to care. Nobody sits here and says they want Hassan Reddick back because of his play and run support. They want him back because he was one of the great finishers in this league and has been still holding out. If he gets to the quarterback, none of that matters, but he's got to get to the quarterback.
John, I missed the super chat, so let's hit it real quick. But sorry, I forgot, James. I missed it, brother. My bad. I meant to bring it up to you. And by the way, for everybody who's in the chat, I'm going to do a little after hours. I'm going to let John get out of here. I got to do another after hours today on Birds 365 for a very specific reason for our man, James Carver. But James checks in for a $20 super chat. He says, Parker and Howie asked Isaiah Rodgers prior to pickup and then OTAs about slot, and he said he can't play the run fits. Even with size, he uses short size to punch as wide receivers comes down to cover for being shorter, so they won't put Isaiah Rodgers in the slot. kind of what you talked about a little bit, John, but what's your thoughts on that and just Isaiah?
Well, nobody's asking Isaiah Rodgers what he wants to do. Trust me, Vic Fangio ain't asking Isaiah Rodgers. Now, that might be the reason they don't want to put him in there. And that's what I say. He's not the most physical player. But I do think the Indianapolis part of it is, partially because of that, but partially Kenny Moore's their slot is one of the best slot corners, has been for a number of years. So to get him on the field, he would have had to play outside. They had some injuries. They put him outside, and he held up pretty well in limited snaps. Well, you see with Zach Bond, I mean, look, Zach was very excited about being an edge rusher and getting an opportunity when he signed here. And Vic got a look at him, and Vic plays him where he wants to play him. To date, they haven't want to play it. They haven't wanted to give him reps inside. Maybe that changes now that Quinyon has shown what he can do outside. Maybe it doesn't. But if I've ever been 100% on anything, it's Vic Fangio will play him where he wants to play him, and he's not asking the player where he wants to play.
Yeah.
I mean,
we did talk about this, John. You remember Josh Davis, the guy we had on the show before from the Philly Special show on YouTube. He's got a big YouTube channel. Does a great job. He had Isaiah Rodgers on, and Carver points out that Isaiah kind of talked about this on the show and mentioned that. So, I'm with you. I don't think Vic Fangio is going
to. I'm not saying the player doesn't, but that's that.
He doesn't have fun.
Yeah, he's not deciding where he's going to play. I'm not saying the player doesn't believe that. The player didn't. I'm not saying the player didn't say that. I'm saying if the Eagles think they can win with him in the slot, he will be put in the slot. They signed him for 1 year and, at the veteran minimum coming off the suspension. Like they're not letting a player like Hassan Reddick, dictate, never mind somebody they signed for 1 year. That's what I'm trying to say. If that didn't get across. I'm sure they'll pay lip service to it. Howie's job's a little bit different, but as Vic has already shown with Zach Bond, he's going to do what he wants, and he's going to do what he thinks is the best way to get the Eagles across the finish line.
Yep, no doubt. Johnny Mac, good show today, man. Great stuff from both of our guests, Mike Gill in hour number 1, Brandon Lee Gowton in hour number 2. I thought both were great conversations today. Looking forward to the show tomorrow on Birds 365. Johnny Mac, great show today, man. We'll talk to you again tomorrow morning on Birds. All right, brother?
All right, sounds good. Thanks, everybody.
All right, Johnny Mac, I'm going to let you drop. I got something to talk about with the people on After Hours here. All right, man?
See you, Zander. Thank you.
All right. See you, Johnny Mac. There's Johnny Mac joining. Great stuff from him today. As always brings great content to the channel on JAKIB Sports. So we appreciate the work he does here. So here's what I want to show you guys on After Hours on Birds 365. James Carver keeps telling me he doesn't want anything. We have to do something for James Carver. I mean, he's done so much for our channel. He supports this channel so extensively. I think Twiz called him the CEO of JAKIB, and I will dub him the CEO of JAKIB, at least at the CEO of the JAKIB chat, without a doubt. So this is what I want to show you guys. And I'm going to let Carver make the decision because I want to send this to James Carver. And I've showed it before, but I don't think everybody was here for it. Let me turn off my little virtual background here because I want to show you guys this thing without it getting all cut off. Give me 1 second. All right, so inside this big old box, I have something that is pretty fresh. All right, let me see if I can pull it up here in a way that everybody can see it. You can see this big old box. This is a limited edition art of Jalen Hurts, and it's fitting coming off the week because he's playing the Green Bay Packers in it. But have a look at that. And in the corner, it says number 50 of 2,000. So there's only 2,000 of these made. Look at that thing, man. Look at how fresh this thing is. I want to send this to James Carver. I think this would be a great thing to send. I have a little frame for it that I would get James Carver. It's signed by the artist down below. I don't want to take it out because I don't want to damage it. But it's perfect. It's a sick painting. It's got Saint Nick up in the corner. There's so much detail in it, and I just love this thing. I want to give it to our man James Carver. I can already see him in the chat saying he doesn't want it. James Carver is a selfless man. You can tell he doesn't want to take it, but I want to give that to James Carver and send it to him. And James, I'm gonna make you take it, brother. He says, no, I'm good. Nope, I'm good. Whatever it is, that's James for you. He's a very selfless person. But that is a fresh picture of our man, Jalen Hurts. James Carver, I think that would make a good addition to whatever man cave you got working down there in Texas. So DM me on Twitter today, James. I'll be on there looking for your DM. I just wanted to show everybody that. I thought that was a pretty sick painting. I think that would be a great thing to send James Carver to show him our support, because he does support the heck out of this channel. And I always say, this channel is nothing without the people that support it. So, I could come on here every day and talk into a void, but I don't, because we have great supporters, and James Carver obviously is one of them. So I want to give that to James. James, DM me on Instagram or on Twitter. I know you're going to say you don't want to take it, but we got to work out something, James. So appreciate all of you guys. I just wanted to show that. And if James refuses it, maybe I will do something for the community and give it to the community of some sorts. But I appreciate all of you guys. Well, JM says he'd rather go to a game. JM, that offer's still on the table. James does have he has an injury with his leg. So I think the game is kind of a tough swing for him to go to a game. He'd probably rather be comfortable and watch games, from his couch where he doesn't have to aggravate his knee. So I think that's the catch with the games. But JM, you're probably right. I don't know. I'm going to talk to James. Me and James need to have a phone call, because my man has been supporting this channel through and through all summer. So James, I love you, brother. I appreciate all of your support. I appreciate everybody's support today on Birds 365, a little after hours edition. Appreciate all of you guys sticking it out with me. Stay tuned on the channel. We'll have the National Football Show coming up from 2 to 6 p.m. I will be sharing out some clips from the Birds 365 this morning. So appreciate all of you guys for being here. That's going to do it on Birds 365. We'll catch you tomorrow, everybody. Stay tuned and hit that like button on your way out.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate, inside the locker room, and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.